Welcome back to Near Mint Condition. This is our segment called Old Reader, New Readers. And today I am joined by Maddie,
Hey.
Amanda,
Hola.
and a special guest, Omnidog. Where's your mask, man? That's embarrassing.
Right here.
Okay.
There I am. What's going on, everybody?
Okay.
I'm showing up on the. Am I showing up on the screen?
Yeah, you
Should
are.
be. You're showing up on my
I don't
screen.
know how to check
Oh,
it.
I'm not showing up on my own screen. Okay, great.
Is that? Oh, because you're usually.
I'm usually
Hosting.
hosting, so that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, whatever. Peace and love.
Thank you. And today we are talking about Kevin Smith's run on Green Arrow. It's 15 issues, starting with Quiver, and it ends with the Sounds of Violence. So, really quick. By the way, these are available in absolute format right now. Amazon has it for 50% off if you want to go that route. Oh, Jess has the absolute.
I do. It was
Hold that up.
one of the first purchases I ever got from the
Ooh,
Omnibus Collectors
That's nice.
Swap group. Yeah, I got it from Jeremy Clark for $45 back in 2015, and it has taken me 4 years to read it.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Omar had to convince me to read it because the first thing I read was Kevin Smith's goddamn run on Batman, which was the worst book
I
I
don't think
ever
that's
read.
what it was called.
It is now.
Also available in hardcovers and a big fat trade, and on I guess the DC Universe app. But so really quick, where was Ollie during this time? By the way, this show will contain spoilers, as it always does. Ollie had been dead. He died in issue 100 of Chuck Dixon's run on Green Arrow. We had the Mike Grell run after DC Crisis on Infinite Earths that led all the way up to the Chuck Dixon run. And then in issue 100, he got killed. He got killed in an explosion, and Superman saw this happen. And then Connor Hawke, his son, that he had just found out that they had been reconnected, became the new Green Arrow. And he became the new Green Arrow for quite a number of years. Also, it's important to note that during this time, Hal Jordan had gone crazy, killed all the Green Lantern Corps, took all their rings, became the Parallax, became the evil villain of DC Zero Hour, I guess, depending on how you look at that book, and then in the end tried to redeem himself by sacrificing himself to the Sun Eater during the final night crossover. So he ends up dying and becomes one with the Spectre. He becomes a new Spectre, which is kind of like DC's version of the Spirit of Vengeance. And that's kind of where we are right now. Years have passed. Ollie's still dead. And this young guy that had done some movies named Kevin Smith decided to take upon himself to bring Ollie back. So that's where we take off. So who would like to go first and talk about the first 5 issues?
Jeff?
Or the return issues?
I vote Jeff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I vote
Thank
Jess
you.
too. He came ready. All right, my brother.
All right.
Kick it off.
Well, to start out with, it's Superman and Batman standing on the Daily Planet building with the sun blotted out because of the Sun Eater. And Superman's freezing cold talking to Batman. And all of a sudden, he feels like a little bit of an aspect of himself disappears. And so a question's raised right there. And you sort of don't. It's a question that's left hanging in the air. What just happened to Superman? Then we're left with remembrances of Oliver Queen, Green Arrow, from Arsenal in action as Speedy, and as Black Canary in action. She's also hanging out, trying to bust some guy who's a scumbag, but she's also remembering her time with Oliver Queen years ago when they were dating, crime fighting and dating each other, and they were an item. So this is all sort of setting it up, remembering Oliver Queen as Green Arrow in the first issue. Then we come upon an ashram where a person that looks like Oliver Queen is in meditation, but he's also got bows and arrows. So we know it's Oliver Queen, and we're sort of wondering what's going on with this is a question also that's sort of left hanging. what's going on with this ashram with these monks that Oliver Queen is hanging out with, and how come these peaceful monks are letting this guy with a bow and arrows shoot arrows in their ashram? But that question gets answered a little bit later in a part that I'm going to cover later. So it's mostly remembrances of Green Arrow as he was, according to the people that he was closest to.
Which were so sweet.
Yeah.
The whole part. I really, really loved that, honestly. But I'm such a sucker for any sort of just like characters talking about how much they love another character or like their own complicated relationships, because we don't get enough of that.
Right, and they both had very complicated relationships with Oliver Queen, because he was a complicated guy, and they had very complex, deep relationships with him. Speedy eventually became a heroin addict, and Black Canary, she had her own issues. And then we're left with Stanley Dover, this old man. We don't know his name yet. He's just hanging out in the good part of town where he's most likely to get mugged. And he's about to get mugged, and this bearded, scraggly Oliver Queen Green Arrow guy shows up looking like a homeless person, and he takes out these guys, and we're saying, what the hell? I thought you were dead. And he's got a beer can tied to the end of his arrow. That's
hilarious.
I know.
So good. Honestly, that kind of trick arrow that's more of an Arsenal move. So I saluted it. I like that a lot. And I dig that whole look was great, because I was like, wow, it's a very like Aquaman sort of look to him right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty great.
So that's issue 1, with ending with the return, it looks like, of Oliver Queen as Green Arrow, just this bearded, scraggly, homeless, arrow-carrying dude. Then we're led into issue 2, where this very young teenage hooker walks into a party, and the party is full of bad guys, mostly this councilman who is not a good guy. He's a dirty crook, a dirty politician, and the party, of course, he immediately is latched up with the teenage hooker, and it gets broken up by Green Arrow, who's had a shave, got cleaned up, and got some trick arrows back, and decides that he wants to register a complaint. But the first thing he does, he tells the teenage hooker that she needs to get out of there and start something new with her life. This is important because she comes back later. And then this is interesting, because this is the first part that shows us that something's a little different with Green Arrow, because he doesn't recognize the councilman's cell phone. He refers to it as a walkie-talkie, and the councilman...
You feel like that some days, Jess?
Shut up.
Whoa, rude.
He says, like, how do you get a badge like a gadget? You're not Batman. Like, that thing was hilarious. It's like, at first I was like, wait a minute, cell phones. I mean, I know they weren't popular in the late 90s, but they were not that expensive.
They were pretty expensive in the late 90s, though. Yeah,
I guess so.
Like 97, 98, they were pretty high.
So the teenage hooker decides to take control of her life, goes back, beats up her pimp, and escapes.
Richard.
Richard, right. So she escapes, and Richard will be back later in this series. So she escapes.
She does something really cool, though.
Okay,
like for a young girl her age, she cuts the tendons in his between the forefinger and the thumb.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Right, and I thought that was really cool. Right, because she's lived. You kind of get an understanding of what kind of life she's had.
She was raped by her father. I mean, this poor girl, Mia is her name, is just Oof.
Mia's one of my favorite Arrow family characters, so I forgot that she was introduced in this. Carry on, sir.
No, that's a good point. So he goes back to where he's living, which is now with Stanley, the old man he saved. Yep. Stanley's a rich old guy that who furnishes Green Arrow with like a mansion and the means to equip himself with all the fancy arrows and a razor and a way to clean up. And
I think it's important to note too that he makes it obvious that he's gay.
Yeah,
right?
He
puts it really strongly out there.
And at first I was like, what the heck is this about?
Well, yeah, because it's Kevin Smith, so I automatically think, okay. But then I forgot about the little thing at the end.
At the end, yeah, and then it made sense why he would be so
Yeah, there's a lot of choices that they make sort of throughout like this first part. That was like, it made sense at the end, and then during this, I'm like, ooh, I will get there. But like, there's some things there's some shots and some drawing. I was like, really? And then later, I was like, okay, you're fine. You're still good. This is fine.
Then there's another scene where Green Arrow, they see reports of his breaking up the councilman's party on TV, and they say on the television that he's back. And he says, what do they mean I'm back? I never left. So he's wondering again, what's going on?
Yep.
And it's the last part.
Okay. I found something on the web for they say on the television. Thank you.
Siri thinks I'm talking to her. Sorry.
So it's a Batman gadget phones.
That Batman gadget thinks I'm talking to it. Speaking of Batman, Batman's in the Batcave. This part is the stretch for me. He's in the Batcave, studying the arrow patterns, comparing them to Connor's, and saying these are more like Oliver Queen's arrow patterns, not Connor Queen's, or Connor Hawk, or Connor Arrow, whatever his last name is.
Connor Arrow.
Whatever his last name is. And then we're shown the first part of the child killer, who is stalking.
That was disturbing when I was like, wow, this is really getting it.
Yeah, that we're shown the first parts of the child killer who seems to be snatching children off the street, blood sacrifice. It's very creepy. Super creepy. So then in issue 3, the crooked comptroller of Star City gets a visit from Green Arrow, and Green Arrow gets another a shock when he finds out that the crooked comptroller does not answer to the commissioner and mayor that Green Arrow knows, that the commissioner is retired and the mayor's dead, and for 10 years, or 10 years seems to have passed, and he just doesn't seem to have grasped that. He doesn't understand. I mean, you can tell by the look on his face right here that he sees, the retired mayor's certificate, civil servant of the year, Harold Leeds, and he just doesn't get it. So there's another clue that something's amiss here. And then here's a thing that we see: refugees of Coast City, from when Hal Jordan destroyed Coast City.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't Hal. It was a cyborg. Superman killed everybody.
Right.
Hal just tried to resurrect them.
I'm sorry. That's right.
Oh, that's okay. He wasn't that evil, but he did try to break the code by resurrecting the people of Coast City.
Right.
That's kind of why the Guardians went after him.
Right. Okay, and this is where Mia shows up again at the youth center where Oliver's volunteering, and she needs a job, and a place to crash. And she does what everybody in the entire United States should do, and figures out that Oliver Queen is Green Arrow because of his yellow beard that's sticking out of his tiny mask. And she just immediately figures it out, which I give Kevin Smith credit for.
So she basically like Tim Draked him, but in like the easiest way, because it's obvious this guy is Green Arrow.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, she just walks and goes up, yeah, you're Green Arrow. Give me a break.
I love the part that he denied it.
I am not the Green Arrow. There is no way, but I'm friends with him.
Yeah, we're close, me and Green Arrow.
Shit. I know.
What am
I know you're Green Arrow.
And so she figures it out and says, I need a job. And so he gives her a job at the youth center and gives her a job at the youth center, and which is important because they become close. She ends up crashing with him at Stanley's place, and Stanley gets close to Mia because Mia ends up hanging out there. And
so speaking of which, sorry to interrupt. So when I was first reading this, there's a scene, there's a panel while she's staying over there, because there's a lot of her just kind of hanging out there for a while everything else is going on. And there's a drawing of her the first night there. She has like a tank top and no underwear, and she's just laying on the bed. And then you see Stanley at the door. And I never thought anything creepy about him at that moment. But I saw that panel and I was like, Kevin, this girl is 15. What is this?
Yeah, there's a lot.
Later, I understood, right? But like before we get there, once we get there, we'll have the grand reveal. But when I saw this, I was like, I'm going to have to bring this up at the show. I can't believe that they would draw this 15-year-old girl like this.
I was like, the whole time I'm reading this, I was thinking about you going, oh, Maddie's going to have an issue with that word, or Maddie's going to have an issue with that joke.
Well, no, I mean, a lot of these jokes are very time appropriate.
Well, they're very Kevin Smith too. Like he's known for like his pro-gay movement, but making fun of gay people, like in that way. Like so.
Again,
so when for that matters, like Stanley dropping
90s, yes.
Well, it is, but it's not like it's different, right? It's not like Stanley calling himself that word. Like that, you wouldn't see that in most of the comic books released now. The F word.
Well, no, because it wouldn't be appropriate. But
again, you know what I'm saying. But even then, anyway, sorry, Jeff.
It's a whole different world.
Yeah,
it's a whole different world.
It's totally fine. So Stanley explains to her that Green Arrow seems to be suffering from some sort of amnesia, supposedly some sort of amnesia. Green Arrow goes out on a run to fight some crime, a big cocaine bust, and runs into Hook Hand Aquaman.
Black Manta. Wow.
And Black Manta. And Hook Hand Aquaman is shocked to see that it's Oliver Queen, because Oliver Queen's supposed to be dead, and he just says Ollie, and Hook Hand Aquaman was about to kill Black Manta. So
and Ollie stops him. He's like, "What's going on? Heroes don't kill."
Yeah, exactly. And so they're both asking, "What's going on? What's up with you? What the hell happened to you anyway?" And the child killer's still on the loose, but Aquaman makes the decision to take, because he's shocked to find out Green Arrow's alive, that he's decided to take him up to the JLA watchtower, which I think is funny because Oliver Queen gets space transporter super sick.
Yeah.
And Batman's still on the trail of Green Arrow, and it does not go well on the even though he gets a major league kiss from Wonder Woman, things do not go well on the JLA watchtower.
I love that. I love when Wally's like, can I also pretend like I was dead for a while? Get a kiss from Wonder Woman.
Yeah, so it doesn't go well there because he doesn't trust anyone. Everything's different because it's 10 years ago. The last thing he remembers, he was on the road with Green Lantern visiting America with a blue little guy from Oa. So that's the last thing he remembers. And, Wally West is in place of Barry Allen, and Connor's the new Green Arrow, and Aquaman's got a hook hand and was going to kill, and Green Lantern is Kyle Rayner. So it's all craziness until Batman knocks him out with one punch, which we always love.
Yes, I do. Every time that Batman's in this, his snark is to me the best part. I love
the fun that they make of him too. Like I bet he was up there for hours just thinking about all those things to say.
That's what Wally says, right?
Yeah, that's what Wally says.
To come down with that.
And I think that's just the way Kevin Smith's portrayal of Batman is, even in the way that I know Jess doesn't like his run on Batman, but even in the way that his run on Batman, that's the way he's written. One thing to note too is that holy shit, Kevin Smith is a comic book reader, because jumping in here, like to know that Stephanie Brown is now part of the Bat family during this time, or just all these things that had happened in the past, like, you know, all these callbacks to just old school comics, like the annuals, and all the team up books. Good lord, man!
And he knows these characters. Like,
there's a major callback to the '60s in here.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. And even Mike Grell's run, I was surprised that he went back that far. Because I mean, that means that the man was reading comic books while he was making movies. Like, he never stopped reading them.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really, really cool.
Yeah, there's a major callback to an obscure '60s comic book here when we get to it.
Okay.
It's not in my Amanda style reading of this.
In my Amanda style reading. I love that you named it that.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's even mention of like the Tower of Babel, like all these stories that have happened, or like Prometheus showing up and taking out the JLA. I love that story, and just a throwback to that. And Shadow.
I'd like to point out it did not detract from me, who does not even begin to understand those callbacks because I haven't read all that.
Well, yeah, I was interested in how you.
I'm sitting here staring here like, yeah, sure, okay.
Well, I was going to ask you and Maddie later on in the show, like how if like that derailed you or anything, because I know when I was reading this when I was younger, like when I was reading comic books and I didn't understand all these things, part of me wanted to go back and check out those other comic books going, okay, that story sounds really badass. One dude took out the Justice League. I got to read that.
Yeah.
But I want to say that.
Yeah, I wondered how Maddie and Amanda felt about it too, because I knew all the stuff leading up to this, and I knew all the callbacks and stuff. So I did wonder how they felt about it, and how they felt about knowing who Jason Blood was.
Oh, I knew.
Yeah,
okay. I love Etrigan. I'm a huge Etrigan fan.
Okay. So you know, whenever Jason Blood shows up, it's not always a good thing.
Yeah. I've read a lot of DC. So I've read a lot of DC. I've read a lot of like events before and after. So even if I haven't read the events directly leading up to, I have an idea.
Mm-hmm.
And I've read like, Brightest Day, Blackest Night, whatever. And I've watched a lot of the movies. So I have a really good working knowledge of what is going on in DC, at least. When it comes to Marvel stuff, it's just like, what? I don't know anything.
Events. But DC,
I'm like, these are my people. I know who everybody is, especially the Arrow family. So I'm like, I know what's going on with my boy Roy at all times.
Your boy Roy.
So
him and his drug problem.
So Batman has got knocks Green Arrow unconscious, takes him to the Batcave, and does what any normal superhero would do, and that is strip him down and examine him. And what he finds is there's no scars or broken bones on Oliver Queen where there should be. He's basically flawless, and there should be, broken wrists. There should be a scar above his heart. There should be various things going on there. And Oliver Queen wakes up.
I like this image right here. His face when he wakes up and he's like naked. That just face when he's looking at Batman is hilarious. Almost looking at us, right? I think that's hilarious.
Yeah. When he's asking where the hell his pants are.
Yeah.
Where the hell are my pants? We'll talk about the characterization.
And Batgirl decides to beat it.
One of my favorite scenes, actually, I don't give a shit if this comes off as cheesy. Okay. But I love when Ollie asks Batman for help, right? And he's like, I could use a lift back. And that is, if you're feeling a little brave and a little bold. I'm like, I don't care if it's cheesy. I fucking love it.
I may not have read that, but I knew the reference.
I thought it was a great reference. I love that reference.
And Batman's big smile across his face. Oh, man. Hell yes.
That's
catering to the fanboys.
Honestly,
that's a big grin.
People, some people just... I always hate when Batman just is written grumpy to be grumpy. You know what I mean? I don't think that's exactly him. He wouldn't have this like dumb, wonderful family that he has if he was always just like, I'm just so broody. The man smiles sometimes. He can be fun. He's just a dork to me. So I'm like, yes, this is the Batman that I like. Like he's just a dork. He has when he's Batman, when he's himself, he lacks a little bit of social skills, and that's what I like to see. This like. I need to be grumpy, but that's a good joke. Like that was good.
That's what I like about Tom King's run on Batman is that he's given him a little bit of social skills. But so Batman is the one to break it to him that he's dead, that Oliver Queen died, and he's and Oliver Queen says. Wait till I tell Hal about this. And he says, Hal, well, that brings up an interesting question. And, he has to fill in about Hal. And so he says exactly, exactly what you said. Are you feeling a little brave and bold? Let's go on an adventure and figure out what's actually happened to me. And they go back to his mansion, where Oliver Queen's mansion, which has been abandoned when he found out that his industry that he had started was manufacturing weapons. He gave it all up. He became a monk at the ashram that I referred to in the very beginning. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, Etrigan shows up. And that is right here.
I think this goes back to my childhood, but I always hated this character.
Oh, you hated Etrigan?
Yeah, I don't like the way that he talks. As a kid, I found him confusing.
Man.
Yeah, okay, you have a song. But
he has it.
I never cared for the character. Like I try to read John Burns' Demon book, and so every time he shows up in a story like JLA or JSA, I'm always like, oh God, I don't want to read this shit. But
he doesn't even always rhyme anymore, which is really interesting.
Oh, in the Rebirth run?
A lot of writers have kind of moved away. It just depends on who's writing him, because sometimes he will and sometimes he doesn't. I will say that when reading this, I couldn't help but use my speed reading skills and just skip through the line.
Yeah.
And I love Etrigan. I think it's more fun watching it than reading it.
Yeah.
I liked him in Justice League Unlimited, the cartoon.
Yeah, I kind of did the same thing.
He's a character that I never cared for. And I don't know, it's weird. It's one of the few characters that when they show up, I'm like, ugh, this
That's
fucker.
Fair.
Yeah. But he did make the analogy of him being the Quiver, so there's that.
Yeah,
that's the right. Important thing he did.
You're right. He definitely pushes the story forward.
Yes, he pushes the story forward.
You're just his quiver, right? Yep. And that's where we go to the Hollow Man.
Yes.
And this is really interesting too. Oh, before we go to the Hollow Man, isn't Stanley isn't this where him and Mia kind of have a thing? Like she catches him, or let's see.
No, not yet. This is where the only Mia we have right before this is where Black Canary and
Roy show up, and they're like, "What are you doing? Are you trying to be Speedy?"
Yeah, exactly.
Which
kind of
I absolutely love,
right?
Because that's the same way that like Kate Bishop became Hawkeye. She just showed up in a random issue of Young Avengers, and she's like, "Hey, I'm pretty good at athletics. I bet if I pick up this bow and arrow, I could do it." Oh, look at there! I kind of hit that in the same way that Mia picks up the bow and arrow, and then these characters end up becoming, having bigger roles.
Yeah.
Kevin Bacon as Hollow Man. That movie was horrible.
That was a terrible movie.
Dustin, I agree. He loves everything.
I did watch it, but
that movie was bad. Sorry, weird. Eric. I'm sorry if you're a big Kevin Bacon Hollow Man fan. All right, man.
That's where my Amanda analysis ends. So go ahead.
Analysis.
Well, listen, we really appreciate it. You know, I'm sorry it had to happen after we decided that we were going to do more casual looks.
You did an amazing job, Jess. But before you take off, I'm sorry, not take off.
Oh yeah, bye.
We kick you off. We kick you off because we're done now. No, before you do let everybody else talk, we do find out what the last memory that Ollie has, and it happened in comic book timeline 10 years ago. So we find out that the last memory he has is the road trip he took with Hal. And Jess, that was one of your favorite runs of all time, I know. So I was going to let you talk about it.
Oh, well, yeah, they've renamed it Hard Traveling Heroes, where they go on the road. He and Hal, this was Green Arrow, Green Lantern, starting with 76, going through 89. But right in that run is they take a road trip. I can't remember the Guardian's name, but he's one of the little blue guys from Oa. He decides to go to Earth because Green Lantern is getting a little rebellious about whom he should protect, and they decide to take a road trip across America and see exactly, show the Guardian what exactly is going on in America back then in the early 70s, as far as racism and poverty and things like inequities on Indian reservations and cults and things like that. And so they call it Hard Traveling Heroes because they're basically living off the land, investigating things that the underprivileged are going through in America. And that's basically his last memory, which is weird to me because that's a lot longer ago than the 10-year gap that they say in here.
I think what happened there is they took in. Oh my God, this is what happens when you retcon stories.
Yeah.
So remember, DC Crisis on Infinite Earths wasn't a complete hard reboot. Some stories were still there from the past, including that one with Hal, the story with him and Hal. Green Arrow's origin was rebooted, but with Mike Grell's Longbow Hunters. But a lot of the things that had happened in his past were still intact to his origin, or I'm sorry, intact to his past. So the 10 years really took place after, I guess, Crisis. Crisis happened, and that he didn't remember that, and he definitely did not remember any of Mike Grell's run and Chuck Dixon's run. So it's like all these bad things that he had done, like killed people and all the things. Right. I mean, he wasn't. I love Ollie. He's one of my favorite characters, but I mean, the guy's kind of a shitty boyfriend, right? I mean, he cheated on Black Canary so many times, and he's a playboy. I mean, we always joked about him being like a poor man's Batman. Like, I mean, that was the joke that it's the exact same origin. You have a rich kid, parents are dead, inherited all this money. Yeah, and then Batman even makes that joke in here. We was like, did you ever have an original thought? Like with your arrow car and your aeroplane? So I thought that was awesome that even he got to play on the joke too. But I love that about Ollie though. He is a broken hero, and he will always let you down, or at least I guess pre New 52. Oh my God, yes. Even when well, that's another story. Anyway, so that's where you find out that the Hollow Man, going back to the Hollow Man, the non-Kevin Smith, Kevin Bacon Hollow Man, is Ollie himself. It's his. He's the Hollow Man that was reconstructed from the single cells from Superman. Like when I mentioned earlier that this helicopter plane exploded, some of his remains landed on Superman. So at the very beginning, when Jess was talking about Superman feeling a disturbance in the Force, he was feeling those small little atoms leaving, these miniature little pieces leaving his body, and they were that's what Hal's gift was. Hal Jordan's final gift before he sacrificed himself was to bring back Green Arrow.
Yep.
And it's a question. It's like, why? Why would he do that, right? Like, even he doesn't know. Like, even within the comic books, he really isn't able to explain why.
Well, didn't he just say that like the whole reason was kind of his like he feels everything going away. He's like, okay, I can do one good thing. I can do one more good thing, and he starts reviving Ollie. But then at the same time, he realizes, oh no, wait, this is actually just another selfish move. I'm just being selfish again.
Yeah.
Right. And so his whole reason is well, the reason he would like to tell people is I just want to do one good thing and bring back somebody who's really missed. But selfishly, he wants to bring back his best friend.
Right, which he can still be a part of. So when we read Green Lantern Rebirth, if you go back and look at that scene, it means a lot more to you when Ollie's the one that shows up with the Green Lantern, you know, the extra Green Lantern ring that he gave him. So they have a really tight relationship. So yeah, Ollie's back, and now his soul is still in the afterlife, right?
Right.
Hanging out with Jason Todd.
Yeah.
Retcons.
Yeah, and
all these dead heroes.
Barry's there.
Barry Allen too.
And we cannot gloss over the most important. Dead Man.
Dead Man.
I love Dead Man. Anytime I see Dead Man, I get so excited.
Dead Man's a cool character.
Dead Man is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Etrigan tries to take Ollie to hell because he's a Hollow Man, and the Spectre snatches him up and takes him to heaven. Yeah, to see his soul. He takes the Hollow Man to see his soul, and the soul is reluctant to go back to Earth to be complete. The soul wants to stay in heaven where he's having a blast shooting at targets.
And hanging out with dead heroes that are
dead
all
heroes.
back.
He's in the peace with himself, right?
I kind of dig that. You know, I have to say, as far as a return of a hero, this is probably one of the most complex stories.
Yeah.
Which is, I'm not saying it's bad. It's just complex, and I kind of dig it because a lot of the time, Jesus, when characters come back, they're like, "Oh yeah, I got better," and that's all it's left at. Like, I think that's
how interesting and introspective this is, because Ollie himself, the real Ollie, has a choice in this, and he chooses not to go back. And he also recommends to Hal, only bring back the good parts of me, which is part of the reason why he doesn't have his memory right before he's done anything truly awful. So he's like, okay, he's like, I could do some good, but I'm not worth it to anyone the way that I am right now with my own transgressions. Yeah. And he sees himself someone who's not worthy of anything. And that's his main reason for not going back, not just because he likes kicking it in heaven. Is because he's like, I'm not worth it. You know, a younger me who was for justice and who was good is worth it. And that's the only person worth bringing back. And so it's neat to see that, and then see, you know, the Hollow Ollie kind of talk to him about that, and kind of, you know, because he doesn't really know and really doesn't have a grasp. I don't think he's capable either. Yeah. So it was very interesting to see that kind of struggle within Ollie.
There's a lot of Kevin Smith in here too. A lot of his religious belief. I mean, the guy, the Catholic religion, right? Yeah. In the way that you can kind of tell it's like purgatory, and just Ollie, you know, not forgiving himself. It's a very Catholic thing. And he writes into a lot of his movies, like in a lot of his characters. Daredevil, perfect example. So then we learn Stanley's origin, because Stanley, to just go over a little bit more what happened, Stanley turns out to be this devil worshipping,
satanic,
and not gay,
definitely not gay,
evil dude that has been trying to trap this one demon. And it turns out that the demon that he's been feeding the children's blood to was not a demon at all, but his grandson. And he's trying to, because he noticed that this demon was kind of had a bond with his grandson, so he was trying to trap this demon. And he goes through a flashback of how it all began, right? Like, because he has Mia, and his plan is to take over Mia's body, because at first he wanted to,
No.
He wants to take over Hollow Ollie's body.
He recognized it as a hollow body first.
Right. So then he can slide in there and take over his body. But before he does, he tells him, of course, the evil origin of his character. And the one thing that I have to point out is, oh my God, does Kevin Smith love comic books? Because oh my God, look who shows up.
Dream.
Okay, so who is that?
That's Dream. Sandman.
Dream.
Oh, okay, that's what I thought, but
So
I didn't see any like no
issue.
one said anything. I was like, well, he looks like what I've seen because I never read any of it.
If you had read it, knowing it, like as soon as you mention the Burgess estate, you're like, oh wait, those are the guys that had Sandman in the basement for years.
Right.
So when you see him, you're like, oh my God, he's tying it into Sandman.
It's
and then
amazing.
just glosses over just vaguely, and then comes back to his main story where his grandson builds a relationship with this demon that he's been chasing.
Well, and he had to raise him, but apparently his son can just raise a demon, or his grandson can just raise a demon, so he's a little jealous too.
Well, the demon had good. He was good at judging people, though. You could tell that what's his name was bad.
Stanley's bad.
Stanley is not a good guy.
That's the callback to the '60s comic Stanley and His Monster.
Oh, really? I didn't catch that.
I was curious about that because everyone else in the comic, like when that name came up, everyone's other league members like, oh, and I was like, I don't understand. Should I know who this is? So
Mm-hmm.
there was a '60s comic. Stanley, and he had an imaginary monster, and it was called Stanley and His Monster. And I don't remember how many issues it went, but I read it, and I had a bunch of issues of it. And he was like this monster, but he was like a big purple monster, and he was.
Was it DC?
Yeah, it was DC. It was one of those goofy Jerry Lewis type comics, and it was and Fox and Crow, one of those goofy things. And so I thought that was a really cool a callback that he brought in Stanley and His Monster, except Stanley was a perverted old coot and not a fun little kid in this.
And then his son shows up because his dad's tied up, and I love when Connor shows up.
Yeah.
And helps rescue his dad. Now, I guess in between Heaven and Ollie's head, he's having to argue with himself, like, "Hey, man, I need you. I need my soul back in my body, or this dude is going to take over us."
Please
and he says no. And he's like, well, fuck it. Yeah. Don't do it for me. Don't do it for the world, but do it for the son that we barely got to know.
Yep.
And that's when Ollie decides, okay, I will come back to the body and we will become one. And it's so badass.
It was really awesome.
And there's the ridiculous arrow that he ends up getting and knocks him out.
Like, I cannot believe that I'm using this.
and I love the Stanley's explanation about, like, oh yeah, I just pretended to be gay because you're heart bleeding liberal, so I knew that you would not think twice about it.
Did not know.
Oh man, I love. It happens in this, right? Like when him and Hawkman get together.
Yeah, it is. It's in the next 5 issues.
Oh, it's in the next 5 when him and
after this one.
Yes, okay. So we'll talk about that really quick. And so yeah, this kind of ends with Green Arrow is now whole again. He's back with his son, and Stanley gets his due justice because he ends up becoming one with the monster. I guess
he eats him.
The monster. I guess him.
And he saves the little boy, and so now, a teenager, I guess now.
Yeah, and then Ollie gets his reward, which is spending some time with Connor.
I was really
where the first 10 issue ends, and then he did 5 more issues, which kind of this. I don't know what the plan was. I feel like this was a setup for Brad Meltzer, and then Brad Meltzer took everything here, even including Phil Hester, and just didn't really run with it. Like, he didn't use any of it because it introduces us to a new villain, Onomatopoeia.
Yes.
And who is going around just killing heroes. And this is basically just a fun issue, him reconnecting with Black Canary, calling her his pretty little bird, and that just makes her weak at the knees. Mm-hmm. It reminds her of all the times they had, all the bad and it's funny because she has a hard time letting go of the things that he had done. And and it's funny because in the other book he was like, well, you can't hold me accountable for things I can't remember I did, right? So it's not technically my fault.
I'm going to use that line.
Yeah. You can't hold me accountable for that drunken state I was in. I don't remember any of that. See how well that plays out. But yeah, him and Connor, Hawkman, are just having a blast at the JSA office. and him and Black Canary go on a date, and that's where the Riddler shows up.
Yeah,
I know, that was funny.
And then they kick some ass and have some sex.
Yes.
It was
And he
pretty
tries
great.
to sneak out early, and that's when he gets busted by Hawkman.
All those pheromones and all of that testosterone and everything just up there.
Meanwhile, she's trying to get him to stop fighting like two little kids, and she's completely naked, and she gets Mr. Terrific to cover her body.
Thank goodness he was there.
Which I love. Oh, man. But yeah, then when we're introduced to the psychopath, Onomatopoeia, who I always found interesting. And
he was.
And what's interesting about that story, it starts where I was born and raised, Harrisburg, frickin' Pennsylvania. Never have I ever seen that place in a comic book or anywhere else. So that was very exciting for me.
Right on, man.
That's where I was born and raised, Harrisburg, PA. Spent a lot of time at the bars around there. Anyway.
All right. So yeah, he gets to fight Onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia ends up like almost killing Connor, and
yeah.
So there's a blood transfusion they're operating on Connor Hawk, and he's not done yet. He finds out that he got the wrong Green Arrow. He wants Ollie Green Arrow. So he goes
to go
back,
after him.
just takes out nurses and doctors. He's an evil dude, but he's so creepy because, you know, I love masks like this, right? Because you can't tell people's emotions. You can't see what they're doing. Yeah. And I've always liked things like that. Now, it's simple. And also, he doesn't speak. He just says he's an onomatopoeia, so he speaks. So he says bam, blam, and then he shoots a gun.
In action words, it's great. At first, a while, I was like, why is he just repeating it? Oh, I get it. I understand.
The name.
Yeah.
So they have a fight, and he decides to kill himself. But there's no body, right? And if there's no body, you know the comic book rule.
Yep.
Dude is still alive. And I really like this last sentence, too, when Ollie says he's enjoying the sound of family.
Yeah.
And they're all making fun of him. And that's where Kevin Smith's Green Arrow ends.
Now, I had a question. When Mia says, God, you're such a mo, is that...
I don't know. I wasn't speaking like that in the 90s.
Homo? Is that
That's what I thought it was. Back then, that would have been like...
Mo?
See, back then, that would have been slang.
I thought they stopped saying that word in the 80s. Like, no. I didn't think... What? Really?
No, homo was used when I was in high school. Are you kidding me?
Oh, okay. Never mind. I thought I sort of a derogatory part of slang. My bad. Okay.
Late 2000s is what you're thinking of.
Okay. So that ends Kevin Smith's run with "You're such a mo."
Yeah, I was kind of wondering about that.
Also, is there a reason they use the nickname Chuckles a lot for various people? Is it just like they just Chuckles over here and Chuckles over, like they keep using it?
I don't know. I really didn't notice.
If there's a reason,
I
like weird like slang term to use to call someone like jokey. Like,
I really thought that was just Ollie talking because I like the way he talks. I think
someone else uses it in here too. I can't remember.
One of my favorite scenes is when he's reunited with the Justice League and he finds out about the new Green Lantern. He's like, "Oh, great! First there's the black guy, then there's the redneck, and now we got a toddler." I love.
Well, then we're talking about replacing them with younger people and the whole like, why are we recruiting kids? Like, there's truth to that.
He's like, we should have been arrested.
We all should have been arrested.
There's a lot of truth to this, and yeah, I'm trying to think of somebody else that's written like that. I mean, Wolverine to an extent is written like that. Maybe that's why I have such a soft spot for Ollie. I like the way that he acts with Mia, especially during his next two runs, the Brett Meltzer run and then the Judd Winnick run. And the Judd Winnick run just makes the entire Arrow family grow. Mm-hmm. I highly recommend reading that because that was probably one of my favorite Green Arrow runs. Before this book, though, I will say I was not a Green Arrow fan. Nothing made me want to go and read it. If it wasn't for this book, I wouldn't have gone and checked out Mike Grell's run or read Chuck Dixon's run.
Yeah.
To me, I think this is probably my favorite thing that Kevin Smith has written in the comic book universe. I think this was more enjoyable than his Daredevil.
This book makes me even angrier at his Batman book. because now I know what he's capable of.
I read the first one. The what was it? The Wyvern
Widening Gyre and Cacophony.
Okay,
now
so
I know what he's capable of. It makes me even angrier at those two Batman books.
Because those had the return of Onomatopoeia, right?
Yeah, and those are two of the worst books ever written in comic book history. And I now that I've read this book, I know he's capable of much better. So now I want to buy him again and pour root beer on him again, just because I'm even angrier at him.
I'm sorry you feel like that, man.
We're gonna have to read that book, now so that I can see if I agree with Jess's sheer.
I read the first
one. I want you to go through it, Amanda.
It was only 3 issues, right? The first one was 3 issues, and then the second arc was 3 issues.
They're 2 thin trades, yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember other than the fact that Onomatopoeia came back, and I think Ollie makes an appearance in it.
Well,
right?
Okay. Yeah. This is not about those books. We'll keep it to Green Arrow, and you can have old reader, new reader, angry reader when you have Batman.
We joked about reading some bad books that I remembered.
Oh well, go ahead. You can have those. You can have the women read those books and have me on, and I will set them on fire.
You're gonna set my co-host on fire.
I'll have the computer outside and I'll set them on fire after I review them.
You're so evil. There's starving children out there that need to read shitty stories.
Oh my god!
So I will let ladies first. What did you all think about Kevin Smith's run?
Loved it.
Green Arrow.
Yeah, it was definitely 90s, man. I mean, like, as someone who's just coming into comics, what I envision, like, what a 90s comic would be like, this is exactly, like, even down to the way it's drawn and colored. Because I felt like it was very, like, this art style was kind of cartoonish in a way, right? Very exaggerated, but I loved it because it was different.
Phil Hester was Kevin Smith's pick. Like, he picked him out himself because he was a fan of his Swamp Thing. Yeah, because he went on to he did those 2 Batman books that Jeff is talking about. He did Mallrats, the comic book with Kevin Smith.
No, so he didn't do Batman.
I thought he did the first one.
I think Kevin Smith had his buddy from
you're right.
the comic book show do it.
Yeah. Kevin, what the hell is it? Anyway.
I can't think of his name. The guy that Walt from his comic book show.
Flanagan. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. So
no, you're fine.
You two go ahead.
But no, I enjoyed the story. I had to get used to the dialogue and stuff because it was some of it was a little cheesy and some of it was very Kevin Smithy. But overall, I enjoyed the story. I think I enjoyed the first 10 issues the most. I guess because I got Quiver. I bought like a used copy, so it only has the first 10 issues. That ends where he joins back up with his body, and that's the end of it, right? So for me, that I felt like was the complete story, and then the rest of it. And you had explained to me that the last 5 issues that we read were setting up for the next writer, and maybe it would have been better if I'd continued on and kept writing to see where they took it.
Not really.
Not.
So, he didn't do anything.
I like the first 10 issues the most.
That's fair. That is the return of Oliver Queen.
Yeah.
What would you give it out of 10, Amanda?
Out of 10?
Mm-hmm.
I think I would give this. I'll give a solid 8 out of 10 because I enjoyed it.
Okay.
It was an easy read.
Maddie, how about you? What were the things you liked or things you didn't like about it?
Yeah, so I loved the dialogue. I thought it was really witty. I thought it was really fun. There were parts where it was very heavy, but it didn't detract from the story at all. But I really enjoy Kevin Smith's writing. I like his dialogue work. I can really tell that he knew about these characters and he appreciated them. And that's not always something you see when you bring in a lot of characters. Because even when you write a single, like a certain character-focused book, it doesn't mean you're going to write all the supporting characters well. But I really liked how he wrote everyone in there. I think if they were all on point, is exactly how they should be. I was really pleased with it. I don't think I was totally overwhelmed by the story or anything, but I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. I don't know what I've rated, I guess. I want to give the dialogue like a 10 out of 10 just because I really enjoyed it. But I don't know. I'd say 7.58 is fair.
Okay.
But yeah, I really liked it. I didn't leave it thinking like, okay, this is the end all be all Green Arrow story.
Yeah.
I think there's other stories that would make me feel much more that way, but I thought it was such an interesting one. And it's not one I expected to read. And it was nice. It's just a very creative story that I was not expecting, because character deaths in DC are not like that. Or if they do come back, it's so much more extreme and dramatic, and it just felt very creative and real, and I really liked it. So
there was a lot of existential stuff in it too that I thought was very unusual for me. I wasn't expecting that either.
Yeah.
What about you, Omnidog? What would you give this out of 10, my friend?
I agree with what both the ladies had to say. I would give.
Smart man.
I think that Quiver was the best rebirth sort of a dead hero that I've ever read. Mm-hmm. That was the way, and it was existential, as they said. I found it to be really well thought out and really well plotted. I enjoyed the dialogue. I can't say I'm Phil Hester's biggest fan.
Same.
Not the hugest fan of his art. It's really slashy, and I'm not a big fan of slashy art, which probably keeps me from giving it a perfect mark. So I feel like Quiver itself was a 9 out of 10. And Onomatopoeia, what's the second book called?
Sounds of Violence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would give that probably a 7 out of 10. So yeah. I guess if you mush them together, it's an 8 out of 10. But I thought that Quiver was a solid 9 out of 10. I loved that book. I can see myself selling the Absolute and just buying Quiver. I could read Quiver repeatedly.
Agreed.
It's definitely the better story.
Yeah.
I feel like you don't need the extra. And honestly, I didn't pay attention really
to the last
anything after Quiver, because I was just like, what's the point now?
Me, I had a crush on both Green and Oliver and Connor. I'm confused. I don't know.
I really okay, so I love Quiver. I still think the best example of a rebirth story to me is Green Lantern Rebirth. I love the way that Hal returned. I think that was the perfect way. This is probably my second favorite way, though. Like I said, it was a very complicated way to bring back a character.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a problem with this because I really wanted to know where the story went. I wanted to see him reconnect with his son. I wanted him to go and be with Black Canary. I wanted to see that relationship build again. Like, what are you going to say after you've been dead? How do you take this girl out that you once had a thing for, and now you remember breaking her heart many times? What do you do? Right? So that's why I found this book just as interesting. I mean, to me, this was a nice little, I guess, extra 5 issues. And I always found the character, as cheesy as he is, of Onomatopoeia, pretty interesting and dark. So for me, I think the whole shebang, also not the biggest Phil Hester fan. I don't know why.
Do you feel like that sometimes?
I think his art
the same.
Yeah, and just I don't know.
I would get confused.
I don't want to say it's bad too, because some of it is pretty decent. It just lots of use of shadows, and maybe that's my issue. Like unnecessary use of shadows. It works at night, but during the daytime, it really doesn't make any sense. So for me, I think the whole shebang gets an 8.5. I love this story. I thought it was it got me interested in the character of Oliver Queen. So much so that I went back and read everything else that had been written or collected at the time. So 8.5. So what did we have? What did we end up with? Jess gave it an 8. Amanda gave it an 8. Maddie, you ended up with an 8?
7.58.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, an 8.5. I think that's a first. Is that the first time? No, Dark Phoenix Saga. Never mind. We don't want to talk about that. So that is our final scores for. There's my boy Psycho Cleveland.
Yeah, he's like, wait a minute, who's that guy?
Where the hell has that guy been?
I don't have the chat up, so I can't see him.
Yeah, he's there. He's already talking smack.
Is he?
Belgium cycling hour break. The Belgian breaking the cycling hour record. No, I did not watch that. I'm gonna have to look it up.
No, I don't think anybody really did cycle Cleveland. Probably
Mr.
not.
Mulligan wants to know if we're gonna read a Kevin Smith book, is this the one to check it out? What do you think, Omar?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've read his Green Hornet. I've read his Daredevil. I read his Bullseye. I didn't read his Spider-Man Black Cat. That's about the only one that I didn't read. But this was by far my favorite one. I think he understands and respects the history of all these characters. So speaking of next reads, over 450 votes. We're going to be reading Avengers Kree Skrull War for next Tuesday. That's
you guys get votes? Wow, you're professional.
Dude, I mean, we had like a lot of votes too.
It's one of those things, like, I really thought maybe it's showing the age of our audience, because we have I put up there the Under Siege story, Avengers Kree Skrull War, Ultimates, Avengers Disassembled, and Civil War. And I really thought Avengers Disassembled and Civil War would be the top two. But no, it went like 31% voted for Avengers Kree Skrull War, and only 23% voted for Avengers Disassembled.
Yeah.
So that's what we will be reading for next Tuesday.
Well, thanks for having me on for this. I've been wanting to read this, and I'm glad you gave me a push for it.
Jess, this is the whole reason I started this show.
Yeah.
So I could go back and read some of these books. It's so awesome. Like, get out my books and just blow the dust off and be like, I remember you, little buddy.
It was a very selfish reason.
I don't talk to my books like that.
I totally believe you do.
I do not. I only talk to my Transformers like that. Don't get jealous, guys. So, and I think so that's for next Tuesday on the 23rd. And I think for the 30th, I wanted to do
something we could do for
Batman. It's really quick. It's Batman, Death in the Family.
Yes.
Not the New 52 Batman, Death of the Family, but the Jim Starlin. Yeah, Jim Starlin's pretty much the death of Jason Todd.
Yes.
4 issues.
You
so that would
spoiled it for him.
Well, we all know.
Oh, well, that's nice. I'll be so hyped up on Avengers Endgame. I don't know if I'll get much done that weekend, so 4 issues is good.
Only 4 issues. That's all it is. Okay, so with that being said, were there any important questions in the chat?
People are just throwing out stuff they want us to... Nope, Patagon, let's not talk about leaked footage. Not on here. Nope.
Oh, don't do that!
Don't do it! Don't do it! Out! I know it's out there. Trust me.
Yeah, we know.
We know.
We're just trying to avoid it. Like, walking around like we're...
I know. The 25th can't get here soon enough.
No, it cannot. 5 o'clock, 25th. Then I can just freak out and be happy and die in House of Deaths.
Okay, well, I'm not going to kill myself after watching the movie, but we're reviewing it right afterwards.
Yeah, we are. We're going to do a live review.
What time are you seeing it, buddy?
Sorry?
What time are you seeing it, Avengers Endgame?
I'm seeing it Friday morning at 9:45.
Oh.
Nice, man. I will be texting you as soon as I get out of the movie. Okay?
No, you won't.
Yes,
I'm
I will.
turning off my phone.
I'm going to do it in code. I'm going to be like, Jess, you'll never believe which X-Men showed up.
Send it in all emojis and then see if Jess can guess it.
I don't speak emoji. I can't guess what I'm coding.
I'll write it for you.
Thank you. So, with that being said, we will see all you lovely people back next Tuesday on the 23rd, where we are going to discuss Avengers Kree Skrull War. Probably one of the earliest Marvel Avengers events. And with that being said, thank you very much, Omnidog. Where can people find you on the internet?
They can find me on Omnidog's Vault on YouTube and Omnidogs_Vault on Instagram. And thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
You know what? So, yes, this is an open invitation for you, always.
Thank you.
So remember that for next month. So, Amanda, why don't you sign us off?
Sure. Before we get going, other news for Near Mint Condition. Remember, tomorrow the 3 of us will be doing our first review of the War of the Realms issues 1 and 2. Issue 2 comes out tomorrow, so pick it up, read it however you end up reading it. and we'll be doing a review 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time live. So if you are reading along or want to know what's going on in this War of the Realms event, join us tomorrow. And we have a panel show. No, we don't have a panel show Thursday. It's your tour, right? We're doing the book tour, the new one for Omar's room. So on Thursday, make sure to check that out. And then on Friday night, we'll be doing a live Reels talk where we're going to be discussing, because some of our fans have requested it, discussing what our theories and thoughts are on how the DCEU movie universe will shape up in the coming years. So
that's what the initials are, DCEU. Yeah, I thought you were talking about DC Europe.
The DC Entertainment Universe. That's what they call it.
Okay.
So if you are
I don't know shit about Europe. All right. Got it.
What they should do next, since we know about as much as we do with the next phase of the Marvel movies, join us for that one. I believe it'll probably be around the same time, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on Friday. Other than that, thank you everyone for watching. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button and ring the bell for notification of more great Near Mint condition content. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media channels at Near Mint Con. Also, we did start a Patreon recently, so if you want to support us, if you can support us, the link's in the description. It's in our bio. It's on social media. Check it out. We got some awesome benefits for our patrons, and we thank all those that already are patrons as well. And other than that, remember, if it's classy and cool, it must be Near Mint. Have a good evening, everyone.
Good night,
bye, guys.
Everybody.